So this is my 7.5 year Xaniversary, as I like to call it, which is my 7.5 years since quitting the benzodiazepine prescribed medication called Xanax that had a profound impact on my health, on my career, on my relationships, on my life for the past 7.5 years. It's been a challenging journey to say the least, but also one of the most empowering, rewarding, and reconnecting journeys. My intention with this video is to give a recap on my benzo story, share where I'm at now, 7.5 years later. I created a video at year 5, which was 2 years ago, and I've had many people reach out with feedback and support and sharing their stories with me, and I just think sharing our stories can be so healing and reconnecting and a reminder that we're not alone in this, and especially in this experience of benzodiazepine withdrawal. It can feel very lonely and very isolating, so thank you to all those that reached out to me for support and sharing your stories. And I'm also going to share just where I'm at now, 2 years after that 5-year mark after that last video. I'm going to share what has helped me. I've had a lot of people ask that, and a little bit about my vision for a more holistic future of medicine. So stay tuned. So in 2005, I was prescribed Xanax. 18 years old, I had had my first panic attack, and I was diagnosed with panic disorder. It helped initially, it worked wonders, it took the anxiety away, but soon after my anxiety worsened and I had multiple panic attacks a day. I was at the ER often, and my tolerance and dosage increased over the years. In my early 20s, I decided to stop taking Xanax. I realized that it probably wasn't helping and that it was an issue, and I stopped taking it abruptly. This nearly led me to the mental institution, and that scared the shit out of me. So I got back on Xanax, and I was also put on Zoloft, an antidepressant, and I was on the combination of those two for the next decade of my life. In that time, I experienced side effects like vertigo and nausea and cognitive decline and all kinds of gut issues, though at the time I had no idea that those symptoms were side effects of the medications. Every time I went to the doctor, they kind of alluded to it being in my head, or it was my disorder getting worse, and they would tell me I needed more medications or to change my medications, or they would give me a nausea pill to help the nausea or a pill to help my stomach, and there was just like a stacking of pills on top of pills and yo-yoing of meds all of my 20s. And in hindsight, I look back and realize that those medications were causing a host of symptoms and kind of keeping the anxiety at bay, but not really, but I guess good enough. And by 27, the depression and anxiety came barreling back with a vengeance due to just multiple stressors in my life. It led to just multiple panic attacks a day again, and nightly Xanax use, and suddenly the Xanax just stopped working, full stop. My body just stopped responding to it, and that freaked me out. I realized I had to make a choice of getting stronger medications or just trying something different, because clearly this path of medications over the past 10 years didn't seem to be solving anything. And at that time, I had started meditating, and I remember being in a meditation and seeing a vision appear. And the vision was like 2 different tunnels, these 2 different directions, like at a crossroads. And down this tunnel was a version of me that was really sickly, really skinny, really sick, really just ill. And it was really, really dark and really, really scary. And then down this path, down this tunnel, it was just completely black. It was nothingness except for a tiny, tiny pinprick of light, just like at the very, very, very end of the tunnel. And though that was scary too, this felt scarier. And in that moment, I was like, I'm going towards the unknown. I'm going towards the void, even though I have no idea what that means. I have no direction or idea what's going to happen here. But I chose that. The next day, it was November 14th, 2015, and I was on my way to a big meeting. I was having all kinds of anxiety, and I was jittery, and I couldn't focus, and that's when I would usually take Xanax. And in that moment, I read a quote on breaking habits. I remember the meditation, and I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. And I decided in that moment, then and there, I'm not taking it. I have incredibly, maybe too strong of a willpower, and I just stopped abruptly, and also sort of out of desperation and impulsivity. I just wanted to be off it. I wanted to be done with it. I forgot about my experience in my 20s, and I didn't think it through. I didn't plan my actions. I didn't seek support. I was very impulsive in that time, just like very, swinging in the extremes, and it was kind of like all or nothing. I was very headstrong and convinced that like stopping this was necessary. So that's what I did, and that is absolutely not recommended. That is the worst thing you can do. You can die, you can have a stroke. It's incredibly, incredibly dangerous, and a lot of people that do stop abruptly do tend to have a longer process of recovery, hence 7.5 years. But anyways, I did it, and the withdrawal this time happened immediately, and the symptoms were 10,000 times worse than when I was in my 20s, and it was quite a journey from there. So I'm going to share my symptoms, but please be aware that this might be overwhelming for those that have experienced this or those that just have a sensitive system. If that's you, I would skip this part. I don't share the symptoms to sensationalize the experience, but a lot of people that have reached out have really resonated with the sharing of the symptoms because they felt less alone, knowing that they weren't the only ones experiencing it, or they hadn't heard of someone else that had that specific symptom, or someone might be going through withdrawal and not realizing that the symptoms that they're feeling are related to withdrawal because their doctor's telling them it's something else. So that's why I share this. I dealt with psychosis, hallucinations, blackouts. I remember traveling a lot at that time for work, and I was like blacking out in the hotel rooms, and it was really scary. I had insomnia. There was really no more than 3 nights of sleep, and those 3 nights were like maybe 4 hours, if anything. I felt just like an absolute overwhelm, and like my entire being, this sensation of just sheer terror, just 24/7. It never went away. It never stopped. And many people I've talked to in the Benzo community that have gone through this say that same thing. It doesn't shake for some reason. I also experienced a heightened sensitivity to light and to sound and to just energy. Like wind would feel like excruciating, and the sunlight would be excruciating, and just the sensory experience was incredibly crushing. And I lived in LA at the time, so that didn't help. I experienced muscle weakness and shooting pains on the left side of my body. So from behind the eye, through the cheek, through my neck, through my shoulder, down my chest, into my stomach and my hips and down my leg. I would just get like pains that would shoot back and forth on the left side of my body, and eventually those pains stayed in just certain places instead of shooting throughout. And that was one of the most physically debilitating things. It felt like broken up glass, just like moving through my nerves all the time. I experienced incredibly intrusive suicidal thoughts that didn't feel like me. They were just unbelievably persistent and invasive. This was absolutely terrifying. I felt like my world and my life at that time just revolved around fighting my own mind to not take my own life, because the thoughts were just so persistent and convincing that that's what needed to happen. And I've heard this from a lot of people that have gone through this experience as well, just those like suicidal thoughts just being absolutely crushing. I experienced insurmountable levels of depression and anxiety that were totally different than what I had ever experienced prior to medication. This was just like at a threshold that was unbelievable. I experienced depersonalization, so it left me feeling just completely disassociated from reality. My mom would have to come to LA and sleep with me a lot of the time, and thank God, she's an angel for how she ushered me through this process and helped me so much. She would have to come and sleep with me in LA a lot, and I remember waking her up and just being like, are you real? Like, is this real? Is this real? Am I real? Am I awake or am I asleep? Like, what's going on? I'm not really sure what's real and what's not. And that was kind of just like a consistent thing. I just felt like I was walking around in a haze in a dream, and I didn't know what was real and what wasn't. And that made me feel just absolutely insane. And these symptoms lasted at a very, very, very high threshold for 2 years straight with no relief, just a threshold of pain, intensity, and terror, and heightened sensation that just felt unbearable and absolutely inhumane and unlivable. And I look back now and I'm like, how the hell did I survive that? And I know after being in this community that not everyone does. But I'm lucky I did, and I'm grateful for that. I've also had people ask me over the years, the specific duration of all of my symptoms, and I've become hesitant to share that because it's just so different for each individual. Some people might heal quicker than me. Some people might not even have any trouble coming off of benzodiazepine. Some people, it might take them longer. Like, I've heard people in protracted withdrawal at 10 years that are still not back to life. So it's very individual. It's very nuanced. There's so many variables. So, don't take anything I'm saying as true to you. I'm just sharing my story and what happened for me. But I will say that, that high threshold was for like 2 years. At year 5, where I made my last video 2 years ago, I was still feeling little bits of things here and there. And in the last 2 years, in the last actually like 6 months, it's become like a trace. 7 years later, I would say overall, I feel just way more clear and grounded in my body and mind than ever before. The nerve pain has finally just become a trace now. That really happened in the last like 3 months, when 2 years ago, at 5 years, it was still like very persistent and very debilitating. It just sucked all my energy, but now it's only a trace. Food sensitivities, I know how to eat around them now, but I would say that if I ever have any flare-ups, I recover much quicker now, when at year 5, it would take me down for weeks. And cognitive decline and impairment, I feel much more bright and sharp and clear now. I don't experience much mental fatigue, when at year 5, that was still prevalent. Emotional stability, I'm happy to say I'm more emotionally stable and grounded now than I ever have been, even before the meds. Maybe that's also age, but I don't experience those same extremes and mood swings anymore. Even when I feel intense emotions, I'm still very rooted and stable, and it actually makes me laugh because my partner has told me that I'm one of the most emotionally stable people that he knows in his life. And it makes me laugh because I was like, if you knew me 7 years ago, I was like the absolute opposite. Like I was consistently almost about to be in a mental institution. So hearing that feels good, but also like knowing it and feeling it for myself. Financial strains, there's still some financial stress. I feel like it's finally taking a turn. You know, I spent like upwards of $100,000 on treatments and trying to survive and trying to figure out what the fuck was going on, because even at year 5, I didn't really understand that I was in benzo withdrawal because I hadn't heard it from anyone else. I hadn't heard anyone else's experience. So I was just kind of like blindly trying to figure things out, and I was, you know, still sick and not knowing what was going on, and spent, you know, around $100,000 on trying to figure it out in treatments. And luckily, you know, I made a good amount of money in my 20s, and I saved a good amount that I was able to live off of, but it was a big lesson in that I was so focused on work and certain egotistical things in my life at that time, that, and not my health at all, that by that time in my life, I had to use all of that money to pay off my health debt, really, without being able to work much. So I'm seeing improvement, but this has been a big one, and a big one in a lot of the stories that I've heard shared with me. And in my last video, I shared that the ability to feel emotion and to feel sensation is a tremendous gift, even though the onslaught of feelings and sensations was just crushing in the initial withdrawal. Like once everything had leveled out, I realized just how beautiful it is to be human, how beautiful it is to experience our bodies and our emotions and our sensations and our own rhythms. And I've been able to experience that more fully now, when before, you know, especially on medications, I was numb and I prefer feeling. So yeah, at year 7, I feel at about 95%, 98% maybe, which feels insane to say at year 7 that protracted withdrawal is real and that it's lasted this long and taken me this long. It's been that slow and of a process, but that's also part of why I'm sharing this, because it's a lot of people's reality. What's helped me? I get asked this question a lot, and another one that I've become hesitant to answer, mainly because it's very different for each individual's body, and it seems to be triggering when I share the things that have helped me, that I've kind of dialed it down to, because they're the more simple and foundational things. And trust me, I've tried all the treatments, all the therapies, all the supplements, seen like every healer you can imagine, but I found that those simple things are key. And again, it really is up to each person to find what works best for their body, but I'm just sharing what I have found has worked for me. So for me, movement meditation and embodiment practices. So I now say that meditation became my medication. So it replaced my medication. It was one of the core things that got me through the withdrawal in the first 2 years, meditation. It helped me ground my mental state in those 2 years. However, it didn't seem to help much or at all with the healing of my body. So 2 years ago, I came across movement meditation, in embodiment practices like somatic experiencing, or like my partner has a movement meditation practice called Workin that's been incredibly healing. I've just found that the gentler approach and moving while meditating and tuning into the body and the breath is a much more embodied experience, and has allowed the trauma and the pain and the emotion to move with greater ease and less force. When I was sitting in stark meditation, I would sit in meditation for hours. Like I went to Vipassana, I did 10 hours a day, 10 days of the week. I did, that silent meditation retreat. I was pretty hardcore about it. And again, though it helped, in hindsight, I'd wish I'd known about movement meditation before. I did a lot of Kundalini, and it was really activating, and a little, now I'm looking back, I think too activating for where my body and my nervous system was at then. And just these gentler practices have been so much more nourishing. And I've just, getting into the body is just essential. It's essential part of any healing process, and especially this process. I really had to relearn how to live and how to be and how to feel emotion and sensation again, and all of those things that arise in the body that felt totally new to me. And though completely overwhelming again in the beginning of withdrawal, I really feel like these things would have been beneficial on the onset, especially because during withdrawal, the intensity of agitation, or if you have akathisia, can just feel how hard it is to make yourself sit in meditation at that time. It seems a little insane. So movement meditation, getting into the body, like I used to disassociate from the body. I was disconnected from my body on medications, and so just really having to practice getting back into the body. So that's why these things are beautiful supportive tools for that. Body work as well, acupuncture, massage, or Reiki, just moving the tissue and the fascia and like detoxing the system gently, and receiving healing energy from someone is really helpful as well. Journaling, so simple, but just letting the thoughts out on the page when they become too overwhelming on the mind, like that was really just, I had journals, so many journals of just letting it out. Cleaning up my diet was huge. So taking out sugar. Once I took out sugar, anytime I brought it back, I noticed an immediate onset of mood swings and like crying spells. It was really bizarre. And I helped a woman come detox off of Xanax as well. I helped her go through the withdrawal, and we noticed that with her too, that she was having less sugar, we were seeing some improvement. And then the moment she had that pie, it was like negativity and mood swings and crying spells as well. So I just found that sugar it doesn't work for me. It brings up more pain again, flare-ups and stuff like that. So I just prefer to not go there. No gluten and dairy, that really helped clean up my gut issues. I feel like I have a fully functioning gut now, finally. It just also helped with the reparative process of the neurotransmitters that exist in the gut. No processed food. I only eat whole foods. This isn't, maybe reasonable for everyone, but I cook like 95% of my meals, and I enjoy it now. I enjoy having that relationship with my food. And this one is probably triggering for a lot of people, but meat. Meat was imperative. I wasn't eating it for a while during the withdrawal, and then when I brought it back in at year 5, I feel like my body was like, oh, like thank God, like it needed it. It wanted it to have those essential vitamins and amino acids to really, and minerals to just really help the reparative process that the body and mind is going through, because it's going through a pretty big process of repair. And I just felt like meat was essential, especially red meat, and still is. Plant medicine, possibly controversial, not accessible to everyone, but 2 years ago I came across microdosing mushrooms and taking deeper journeys. I found it to be incredibly supportive. I found it to be incredibly healing, incredibly connecting to the body, but only with guidance and support. I would not recommend just trying to figure it out on your own. Get help, get support. Also, I didn't feel like my body was stable enough at year 5 or up until year 4, maybe, to do something like this. And self-compassion, patience, and radical acceptance. These are huge and also really triggering. Self-compassion is a really important part, an aspect of healing. Speaking to yourself kindly and not shaming yourself for your situation, which I know feels fucking impossible. Trust me, I have sat here for 7 years just watching my peers and my friends just seemingly soar past me, having kids and buying multiple homes and making tons of money and having successful careers and traveling. And I've just kind of been sick and unable to stay afloat and living with my parents because I had to leave LA. I couldn't work. So there was so much shame, so much shame, and just the situation I was in and living with my parents and, my financial situation. So self-compassion is really important. Patience, you cannot force your healing, and trying to do so will only prolong the process. Trust me, I tried to fucking attack my healing. I was like, I'm gonna make this happen. I'm gonna will this into existence. This is like my full-time job. I'm gonna make it happen. And I really, really believe that prolonged the process, instead of just being able to sit back and relax into radical acceptance, which is also so fucking triggering, I know, but just radical acceptance of your situation and knowing that it's temporary, and maybe realizing that, it's happening for a reason, as cheesy as it sounds, and that there might be all kinds of lessons and opportunity in this process. It took me a long, long time to accept that. But trust me, self-compassion and patience and radical acceptance and just practicing those things for yourself, very beneficial. Also knowing that healing is not linear. It's important to remember that setbacks are part of the process. Don't be discouraged by slow progress. Stay focused on those small changes and realize that it's progress. Like, healing is not going through withdrawal and then making small progress, and it's just like one straight line of ascension up and nothing in between. Like, that's not life. That's not reality. That's not healing. Healing is not linear. It's here, and 10 steps forward and 5 steps back and 3 steps forward and then 20 steps back. And it's just like it's not a linear process. So remembering that will help you anchor into acceptance. Rest. Obviously, rest is essential. For some reason, again, this was really hard for me. I needed a full stop. And I still didn't full stop. Even 2 years ago, I presented with another big health crash, and that's when I realized, like, I just need to rest, like, straight up just rest. And I needed to rest longer than I could have imagined for my body to repair, but it's essential in this process. And eventually get to the root cause and learn to trust your intuition. Ultimately, after taking care of the basics and like stabilizing yourself, you have to identify the root cause of the symptoms that led you to visit the doctor in the first place and get prescribed the medication in the first place. A lot of times, like in my process that of the last 7.5 years, I was kind of uncovering that root cause, but I needed to stabilize myself more than anything. And being on the other end of it, identifying the root cause has been really impactful in addressing them. And whether that's anxiety or depression or insomnia or pain, like there's an underlying cause to these, whether you hate your job or you're not in an aligned relationship or you have a poor relationship with food or your body, like you have to get to the root cause eventually. And you have to find a way to trust yourself and your intuition and change your lifestyle if you need to according to your own natural rhythms, and just like learning your own natural rhythms and learning your own pace and learning to trust your own rhythms and fall in line with it and trust your intuition. That creates a lot of sovereignty and really important part of this process. And creating a personalized withdrawal plan. So talking to your doctors about wanting to taper so that they're aware, creating a taper schedule according to the specific meds that you're on and what your needs and your pace is. I always suggest dialing in your nutrition and your movement and your meditation, all those lifestyle practices before tapering so that you have time to like integrate them as habits, because they'll be really supportive when you start to go through the process. Get, a therapy or a therapist ready. Tell your friends and family that you're about to go through this process so that they're aware and that they can support. It creates like a big relief to have the people around you know what you're going through instead of trying to hide it, because there's a high likelihood that you're going to feel off and be acting off. And so having them know and having to feel like you don't have to be on all the time can be a huge relief, and have them check in on you, a big one. And again, just dialing all of these things in before going through the process and creating that plan will just create much more success. And I know that seems like, wow, like that's a lot. That's overwhelming, but trust me, it's better than taking the risk of just trying to muscle through it and ending up in a situation like this where it can, destroy your health and your relationships and your finances and your career and, over a prolonged period of time. It's not worth it. And luckily, there is now more support that I'm seeing out there in the world. There's more awareness, there's more stories being told, and specifically there's CoHeal. So CoHeal is the only online treatment center with medical professionals, therapists, and 24/7 emergency support devoted exclusively to benzo withdrawal, which is huge. They offer holistic support for tapering. Their team of experts will actually help you develop a plan, a withdrawal plan that's tailored to your specific needs and your pace. Like that plan that I was just talking about creating, you can work with someone to help you, support you in creating that potentially overwhelming plan. And they also offer coaching through the process. They'll help you create the tapering schedule, and they also offer medical advocacy, which is huge. Like there's a lot of people that are going to their doctors and wanting to withdraw, and they're getting gaslit by their doctors, or their doctors don't believe what they're going through and their symptoms, or they don't want to help them because it's a huge, it could be a huge problem for them, or they just don't believe that Xanax could be a problem or benzodiazepines could be a problem. So that medical advocacy is huge. So CoHeal is doing amazing work. It's so needed. They're going to help so many people. It's filling such a huge gap. I found them on Instagram. I got on a call with the founder, and I cried because I was like, I wish I had this when I started my withdrawal. And I'm just so like, I know this can help so many people. All the people that reach out to me, there's only so much I can do. And like now there's a place that's like creating a specific structure and system and like real support and action. So CoHeal, check them out if you need them. And there's also Benzo Information Coalition. They are a nonprofit organization of patients and medical professionals that is educating and partnering with various groups to advocate for better understanding of the medical and social needs of benzo impacted community. And they educate and reach out to people, they lobby for research, and they help work towards informed consent laws to equip doctors and patients with knowledge about the risks of using these drugs, outside of emergency situations. So they're doing huge work, working with the government to create change, working with the FDA to create change. Beautiful team of patients that have gone through withdrawal and just medical professionals. I helped them build their Instagram account, and we created a series called Benzo series where people are sharing their stories like this. And that seems to be really impactful and healing as well, and just to create more awareness around this. So they're doing amazing work. Check out Benzo Information Coalition. To address this, I would like to see a crackdown on prescribing and patients being adequate informed consent, more education and research for doctors on the harm of benzodiazepines, acknowledgement of patients experiencing side effects and withdrawal symptoms, so no more gaslighting, a medical system that recognizes benzo withdrawal and creates protocols to help people through withdrawal. Reparations would be awesome to the thousands of people whose lives and financial realities have been ruined over the years. Clinics specifically designed to support individuals going through benzo withdrawal. More discussion about disability and its impact on participating in a capitalistic system and a productivity culture. There's a beautiful writer and poet, Sophie Strand, that talks about this conversation really eloquently and beautifully. I'd like to see more of it. Just, even though I don't like to label myself, and I'm not really in this position anymore, but when I felt disabled and I just could not keep up with the productivity culture, and just how hard that can be on the psyche, and how hard it is to keep up when you keep getting ill financially, mentally, physically, just in life. I'd like to see more conversation on that. And a future medical system that treats individuals holistically, considers the whole person, and values humans and life over power and profit. In closing, this has been an incredibly challenging experience, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, but on the other end of that, it's been one of the most rewarding and empowering experiences of my life. I found my inner strength, and I'm now more mentally stable and emotionally stable than I was before. I'm grounding deeper into my own body and into my own sovereignty. This experience has humbled me in the most beautiful and absolutely necessary ways. It's forced me to practice patience and acceptance and listening to my body, attuning to my own cyclical rhythms and my own pace without, taking into account all the, outside noise, just what works for me, listening to my intuition, strengthening my intuition, and just listening to my body and my rhythms. It's given me profound insights and wisdom and empathy and a depth of connection with myself that I never had before. It's helped me just really learn who I am and what I stand for, and it's truly solidified my inner resilience and fortitude. I know without a doubt, I can say it with all the confidence, that I am a fucking warrior for having survived this experience, to be on the other side of this experience. And to anyone that is in the thick of it or has been through it, I honor you. And if you're in the midst of it right now, I just want to say It gets better. I promise. It may seem like it will never end when you're in the middle of it. You might feel like you just can't bear it anymore, but I promise you it gets better. I'm living proof. You can not only recover, you can feel better than you ever did before. You're not broken. You're not doomed to be mentally challenged or chemically imbalanced forever. That's nonsense. You can recover your balance. Your brain is adaptable. Your body can heal and recover. It's possible. I'm living proof. So just hang in there if you are in the thick of it, and know that there's so much more support now. Yeah, so happy 7.5 years to me. I've considered leaving this behind many times and being like, why do I need to keep sharing? And maybe I should just totally forget about it and not talk about it anymore. Maybe it's like holding me back from healing more. But each time, someone reaches out to me and asks for help or shares their story, or I see another story, it just fully reignites my passion to do my part, even if that's just sharing my story. So if you have any questions, feel free to DM me. This topic will always be super important to me, as it marked, a monumental turning point in my life. And I hope this message gives those of you who may be losing hope some hope and assurance that healing is possible. And thank you for listening and supporting, and have a beautiful day.